I'm here this morning at the SRK offices in Toronto, one of the best known names in technical consulting in the mining industry. Now, teams here work with companies to solve some of the toughest challenges, from resource modeling to design and risk. We're also here at a very busy part of the year where the annual PDAC conference has just concluded. And I'm here to speak to someone who's been at the forefront of some of these conversations. His name is Ben Parsons, the president of SRK in the US and the principal resource geologist. Let's go find him. Ben.
Devin.
I thought you might need this, especially after PDAC.
Yeah, great timing.
Well, look, I would imagine some interesting conversations at PDAC.
Yeah, it was definitely a busy one this year for sure.
Yeah, I thought we'd find out how those conversations are impacting on the consulting business.
Yeah, let's sit down and have a chat.
Ben, thanks for having me in.
Well, thanks for joining me here today.
Well, look, let's talk about the US. How long have you been in that position for SRK?
I've been with SRK for almost 20 years now. I actually spent 5 years in our offices in the UK initially, working under a lot of skilled people there. And then I transferred over to the US 13 years ago to take on the role as a principal resource geologist and building up our skills and group out of our Denver group. And then in the last 6 months, I've actually taken on more of a managerial role as well as a man of many hats within our group and taking in that US president role for our US operations.
Yeah. Look, it's a very, very interesting time indeed, isn't it? You have gold and copper both experiencing highs as well as other precious metals. I'm wondering whether or not that has driven activity in such a way where you have different types of work walking into your door here.
Yeah, I would say there's been a little bit of a lag, though, in the typical cycles that we would expect to see. So I'd say the last big cycle was 2010, 2011, 2012. The amount of new projects and technical reports being published on the TSX and BC with the British Columbia, we are averaging probably somewhere up over 1,000 reports on an annual basis. Mm. At the moment, we're seeing that number still to be in sort of the 500 to 600 range at this point in time. So I think what's really been happening is we've been seeing a lot of people being a little bit more controlled with their capital deployment. A lot of people have been rebalancing and resetting their balance sheets. But what we're starting to understand from our discussions here at the conference, talking to drillers, drilling contractors, is there is a definite uptick in the amount of activity happening in the industry again. And then that will, of course, lead through to work which we do here traditionally in the consulting environment. I think if we were to break it down, there's kind of the three areas at which you could look at that. There's definitely been a lot of focus on M&A activity with the rebalancing of the sheet. In terms of projects and technical work, though, that we're doing and authoring, we've seen more of a focus on sort of brownfield extensions, looking at significantly increasing production on certain projects and things like that. And I think a lot of that is to do with the fact there's concerns on permitting and the length of time that it might actually take to bring things to market. There's a more near focus on what's actually available and when they can bring things into production and into the production profile at a quicker rate to actually take advantage of these great projects. But all of that being said, at the back end, what we're seeing is a lot of older projects that probably missed out on the last cycle and going through just from economics at the more depressed pricing that we're seeing relative to now are starting to come back around again. And new ownership, new explorers looking at it in different ways, that they're starting to develop those projects. And those are the things that we would expect. We definitely think we'll start seeing an uptick through this year and moving forward. So I would expect that number from 500 to probably be quite a bit higher by this time next year.
It's interesting you say that, because I was also wondering whether some companies get caught up in the cycle.
I don't want to say there's a fever that goes with it, but there's a definite rush to try to be involved, rush to try and get in on those markets. And I think that discipline that is needed to come around, a lot more people are understanding it this time through the cycle. So that's where that capital deployment, that little bit of delay, people wanting to take a bit more of a closer look, looking more holistically around the project as well, not just I need some ounces in the ground, but I need ounces in the ground, but is there potentially environmental issues or water issues that are coming down the line that may add complexity to a project, that they may rejig their profiles on where they actually want to spend that. Yeah. I think our job as consultants and independent consultants is to help and provide good advice and sound advice to those clients, to make sure that they're not getting carried away in the cycle. That at the end of this, if we were to roll forward 6 months to 12 months to 18 months in this cycle, what we would like our clients to be having is a robust project that will stand up to the economics that they can take to get invested and actually bring to market at the end.
This critical mineral cycle and this energy transition, if you like, certainly would have brought a new class, a new category of clients in the market as well, right? How is that changing the skill set that is required by SRK, for example, to assist you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You noted on 2 points there, which I'll touch on in a little bit more detail. Is yes, new clients. A lot of people and players coming into this, and we've noticed this, and this has happened not just this year, but probably over the last 3 to 5 years, is we're used to dealing with majors, mid-tiers, junior miners who understand the mining process and the complexities that are involved with it. There has been a movement to people trying to prove up their supply chains and sort of longer term agreements that they need with that. So we're seeing car makers, battery companies, chemical companies entering into the market and looking for expertise in areas that they are non-traditional to them on the mining front. On our side, for what that really though has meant for our business is what it's actually really taught us to do is to be more integrated as a company. Whereas I traditionally, in a traditional sense on gold and copper projects, if we take those as the initial things we started at, we would always have a kind of, it's not a direct playbook because every deposit is unique and has its own intricacies that we'd have to learn around it. But there was a process to that. But you can't take a gold playbook and apply it to a lithium brine. These are completely different beasts and completely different understanding. So we've had to build on enhancing our skills and the expertise that we brought into the company on things like processing, understanding the impacts of the hydrological conditions and how they influence these things as well. So our more traditional old silos that you may have thought that may exist between different groups, that's become a lot more fuzzy, and we're getting a lot more interaction and integration between our different technical groups, which at the end of the day is actually leading us to better products, even from the non-critical minerals as well. So that's really where we see ourselves in going. So it's kind of a twofold approach of strengthening our bench on the technical side of things, but also being able to provide companies and sort of more non-traditional miners who may have different considerations for ESG and hydro and water stewardship that's actually needed around it, or with the government, to kind of wrap around that to understand the overall influence in the supply chain. So it's interesting time.
All right, Ben, let's talk about another buzz concept here, and that is artificial intelligence. While you're speaking about the younger crowd, how has AI moved the needle in the consulting work that you do? And are there certain areas where the hype is moving ahead of reality, let's say?
Yes. Yeah. I think the most important thing with that is to say what AI is not. Yeah. Let's start at that point. AI is not a magic pill. It is not something where we can push a button and you can develop a geological model, a mineral resource estimate, design a mine, write a technical report that will meet the rigors of what is needed for regulatory disclosure. What we often are dealing with, we are dealing in a world where we have pretty relatively sparse data relative to other industries and knowledge points that we're trying to pull across. So it's that industry expertise and integration of those teams, which is where we're supplementing. So when we talk about AI or we talk about new technology, we've been doing machine learning, and we've had a lot of skilled data scientists working within our groups before these even became buzzwords, is we look to technology for ways that we can augment and add skills for our experts. If we can make things easier that they can actually look at more data, it allows us to get to that next level of complexity in a problem. So that is really the power of where we see the technology moving and going. The idea that there is a chatbot that's a magic oracle that you can ask a question, unfortunately, that's a perception that might be out there of what AI will be doing. What we focus on here at SRK is how we can find things to improve the work that we're already doing, to actually get to a better answer, to produce something that's more robust, maybe better assessment of risk within our existing profiles that we're already doing, that we can provide to clients. And that's kind of our approach that we're taking.
So another big issue is consolidation of consulting firms. And you have instances where we see firms either merging or perhaps even bought up by private equity or basically going into bigger engineering groups. And I'm wondering, for an outfit like SRK, which is an independent technical consultancy group, how do you see that happening and impacting on the work you do?
What people are starting to look for when they're developing projects is kind of that one-stop shop, somewhere you can go where you know you can deal with an expert who can tackle your problem. And if they can't tackle the problem, they know someone within the group who can help and supplement that study to actually provide that professional advice that's needed to either de-risk or advance the project to the next phase. The private equity that has come in, and they've been buying up a lot of these niche firms. They see that as a cycle, that this is actually a market, it's a skill that is needed, and that's a continued trend that we're expecting to see. What has happened is that it's taken up a lot of consolidation of these smaller firms that could actually do that. Where the bigger engineering firms are doing is, their goal is they want to build mines. They want to do the engineering studies at the back end, but they've never had those more niche fits at the front end to actually front end the study. So they've definitely moved in and taken up a number of our competitors and moved them into that cycle. Where we sit as SRK is, one of our core values is we are employee-owned and independent. And that is the framework on which we base everything. So if I was looking at where does that leave SRK, to answer your question, is I think it leaves us in a really great spot, because we are truly independent. We offer independent advice. We do not have any motive to be positive or negative on it. You know what you're going to get is a very robust project that we're producing for you. And that's really the tip within which we still work within the industry.
Now, I want to get to your actual dealing with clients. And it's a very interesting picture, especially with the earlier guys, earlier in the journey guys, right? When do they actually bring you into a project? My guess is that more often you would see people beginning to bring companies like yours to scrutinize earlier on in the project. Has that always been the case? Is it not the case? Is it changing?
That's a fair question. It's quite interesting, because we are such a large group across SRK with over 1,800 employees in 45 countries and offices around the world. We actually get involved in all different stages of the process. So I myself, as a geologist, I am often that front end. I'm often the first person on the ground, or I am there, or one of my exploration geologists or structural geologists may have been in there first. We come in when we get to the point where somebody wants to move that project to the next phase. They may need to raise money and start moving in. So I don't think that's really changing as much over our industry, but where we've seen growth within our business is a lot more in the environmental and the back end side of things. So I have colleagues within my company who are not really exposed to the cycle that we talked about earlier, in that the majority of their work is related to closure of mines and working with the government and making sure monitoring and everything is up to date. So our entry in depends really on who you're working with within the group. And that's one of the beauties of working with SRK, is we are a group of entrepreneurs and who work together under this framework to service needs across various things.
I'm wondering, Ben, if you look 5 to 10 years out, what does the mining consulting business look like, given the fact that things are evolving at a pretty unpredictable pace sometimes?
Yeah, that's good. I think for us at SRK, I mean, our basis for our consulting is working with clients and understanding their needs. The first question we often ask is, what do you need? And then the second question we may ask is, what do you need? Because sometimes it's working with them to really understand what it is, the actual focus of helping in the study and the problems that they have, or the need they have. Maybe it's a financing need, maybe it's a detailed engineering needs that they're having problems with, metallurgical issues, or maybe it's an environmental or a hydrological needs. It's having that communication and having that skill set. I think, as we talked to earlier with the new technologies, and if we throw the AI buzzword in there as well, this is just offering us skills and more tools. Our core business is providing independent advice to clients, and that will remain our core business going forward. So where do I see that? Probably if I was rolling out 5 to 10, it gives us opportunities to not only be the more traditional house that you used to have was, I need a technical report so I can go raise money. It's really working with upper management and getting involved with companies that we can help them assess their projects through it. So partners on the engineering side to de-risk and assess projects through it. That's where I see us being as SRK, is in that space. And that independent advice is kind of our core concept that will underlie all that.
Well, look, it sounds compelling to me. Ben Parsons, thanks very much indeed for your time.
Yeah, thank you.